I told my mom, your boyfriend is crossing a few lines. You will not believe what my mom told me. You're the one who's always hanging out with him. Now keep in mind, my entire childhood I was deprived of a father figure. I had no male figure in my life telling me they love me, they care about me, even showing it. So she made light of it. And as you can imagine, this guy's not stupid. He could connect the dots. And I think he could also tell that my mom and I are not very close. I know for sure you could have felt that disconnect. So that's what he capitalized on. I talked to her when this boyfriend of hers was doing the unthinkable. She made light of it. So this even made me feel worse. Because I'm like, okay, so mbona ulinizaa kama unitaki? Could have just given me up, because I didn't have to go through all that trauma. Yet I have a parent who's very capable. It hurts. Kids are being traumatized by their family members, parents, relatives, and nobody wants to talk about it. We can't normalize that. So a big chunk of my life, my mom felt like a stranger or a distant relative. My name is Susan Grace. I am a radio presenter, though I've not done that in a minute. I'm a TV presenter, currently hosting crossover on NTV. I'm also a corporate MC, and occasionally I do give my voice for voiceovers. Yes. And above everything, I'm a Christian and I love God. Now, when most people look at me, they tend to assume that my life has always been a walk in the park. Well, I hate to bust your bubble, but that could not be further from the truth. My life starts in Kiambu, where I grew up with my grandmother. Yeah, not the grandmother, but the super military strict grandmother. And as a child, I struggled with feelings of neglect and just being rejected by my own parents. My mom, who was in the picture but from a distance, and then my pops, who was not even in the picture at all. And that was the beginning of my very unpleasant and very painful journey of getting into suicide, self-harm. I'd cut myself to get some peace because I felt like my mom didn't want me, and I forcefully forced her to be my mom, if I may put it that way. And later being sexually assaulted by her boyfriend. And the first time I told her, she didn't believe it. So as you can imagine, the guy kept taking it to a different level. And after years and years of a strained relationship with my mom, it was starting to look hopeful. And we were sort of getting close, yeah. And unfortunately, she passed away. And the traumatic thing is I actually saw my mom dying. Yeah, it was a very gruesome image to see. But all in all, as the casket was going down, all I could see was all the answers I needed going down with her. I needed to know why she neglected me as a child, why she didn't pay attention to the things I complained about, why I cried to her for so many years and she didn't believe me, why she didn't believe me when I told her boyfriend was doing the unthinkable. But then eventually I realized there were so many questions that I may never get, actually will never get answers for. She went with them. And I tend to believe that sometimes not getting the closure is the closure we need. And just when you think all that is too much, my biological father shows up for the first time in my life at her funeral.
Take a moment and check out www.psychex.io, a trusted partner in mental well-being. With Psychex, you can connect with licensed therapists specialized in various areas such as anxiety, depression, relationships, and more. Psychex also offers comprehensive wellness programs tailored to boost employee morale, productivity, and mental resilience. So why wait? Take the first step towards unlocking your true potential today. Visit psychex.io and start your journey to mental greatness.
I'm an extrovert. I talk so much, but I don't talk about my story. So I'll talk about everything else. Again, the personal, I'm like, okay, count me out. But I realized sharing, you feel some sort of relief, like it's off your shoulder. And then just by putting it out there, you realize it can impact hata kama ni one person. So just that encouragement of, I shared my story a while back. Like there's a story I shared about how my biological father showed up for the first time in my life at my mom's funeral. And you look at the comment section and people are talking about how bitter they are about their dads, how they wish their dad would show up, like regardless of what the circumstances are. So realizing that by you sharing your story, it's impacting someone else, it's motivating someone else. And for me, it's some sort of therapy. Like, I just get to talk to people and not pay for therapy. It just, unaitoa tu, because I don't talk, I've never gone for therapy. I think I've always been scared to just pour out my entire life. I love najua therapists have a way of poking those wounds that you didn't even know were wounds. So tell me about your childhood. You're like, how about now? You know? So just talking about it, it's, for me, it's very therapeutic. It's lifting off some weight off my shoulder a day at a time. I'm the only child, raised by a single mom, but my mom was not in the picture. She was in the picture from a distance. My paps, let's not even talk about him. He's not even in the picture at all. In fact, he only showed up for the first time in my life at my mom's funeral, but we'll talk about that story later. So my childhood was quite, I really don't want to sugarcoat it. It was not good. Because here you are, an only child. I was put in the hands of my grandma. And I know most people, when they hear grandma, they're like, oh, well, not this one. Not this one. My grandmother was very strict. But I feel like she was extra strict and brutal with me. And as a grown-up, you know, when you grow up now, you start putting two and two together. Actually, when I was in uni, as much as I was pursuing journalism, I took some units of psychology to try and understand why is this math not mathing. And I came to realize there's something called projection, where you're angry at someone, but you take it out on someone else. So when I grew up, I was like, okay, now that probably makes sense, because my mom was what I would say the perfect child. She was doing very well academically. She was called to Alliance. She went to University of Nairobi. She was doing very well for herself, you know. Na academics alikuwa chonjo, so yay. And then she became pregnant with God knows who. But here we are, right? So I think that bruised my grandmother's ego. And because my mom was not there, kuchukua hiyo kichapo na makasiriko, I was the one who was, you know, present. When I tell you, my shosho used to beat me up. Do you know, I remember at some point, my great-grandma, that's my grandmother's mom, yeah? Kuna time aliambia my shosho, just call this girl's mom, tell her to come and pick her child, kwa sababu utamuua huku. Unimagine kichapo unapigwa ndo, for someone to come and intervene and say, utaua huyu mtoto, you know? It was a very rough, I think approximately 13 years. That's when someone finishes their primary education, right? Yeah. Because I was there until I finished my primary. So it was just, you know, constantly being called a useless and hopeless child. And you see, that breaks you because, I mean, my parents are not here, so clearly I'm not, you know, worth their love. So I could possibly be useless and hopeless, you know. And it's constantly, yani inafika mahali mpaka ukitukana una lip sync. Like, you know, it was so bad. And it gets to you as a child. Now, on top of that, there's the beating. There was a lot of restrictions. Like, I couldn't do anything. I don't think I even have childhood friends, because for her, it's you go to school, come back, do your homework, study, chores. School, home, chores, whatever. There was just like a particular order of things. And I remember the few times she caught me playing, I got in trouble. So kama ulikuwa unacheza na tumawe, atakupiga na hizo mawe. Kama ulikuwa unafanya skipping rope, atakupiga na hiyo kamba, you know? So it got to a point where now kids were scared to hang out with me. So my childhood was full of so much pain, physical and mental and emotional, and also a lot of fear. I didn't know how to talk around my grandmother, you know? So all this time, I started this habit of sneaking into my shushu's bag. I take her phone. I call my mom and I'm crying. I'm like, Mom, you don't want to stay here. Like, I'm crying. Like, it's genuine tears. It's not, I'm not putting up a facade. And I'm crying, I'm telling my mom, I don't want to stay here. Shosho is so mean to me. She's always beating me up, calling me names. Please come and get me out of this place. And she's like, oh, don't worry, I'll talk to her. I'm like, don't talk to her, because you talk to her, I get in trouble. So she would talk to her anyway. And of course, I'd get a beating for that. But I'd still, like, I never gave up. I kept calling my mom. I'm like, as in, seriously, I've been calling for so long. You've got to believe me, you know? You know, when you're a child, unaambiwa mamako alienda Nairobi kutafuta, you know, pesa, kazi, so that the two of you can have a good life. I'm like, amekuwa akitafuta for too long, you know? Because it got to a point where now she'd come visiting, and I can tell she's doing very well. She had a car, and I'm like, life must be very good for her. So what's the excuse now? So I kept calling. I'm like, Mom, you need to get me out of this place. And I'm crying, and she's like, oh, I'll talk to Shosho. She talks to Shosho. I get in trouble. So I got to a point where I'm like, I don't even care. Manze, I've begged you for so long. So if I die, I die, you know? So it got to a point where, so at first, when Anush was coming, I used to see her once in a blue moon. And it used to be on a Sunday afternoon. She comes Sunday afternoon, she'll leave at around 7 or 8. So those are a few hours with my mom. So when I knew she was coming, mi nilikuwa nangoja kwa barabara. Like I would camp by the roadside until she comes. And before she get into the house, I'm like, Mom, okay, so take me with you today. Nothing. So it got to a point where I didn't care whether she's coming or not. I'd just be in my room, minding my business. And then she'd come, she's like, oh, why are you so quiet? You didn't come to say hi. I'm like, I'm good. So I was no longer excited to see my mom because I'm like, my God, I've been crying to you for so long, asking you to get me out of this place, and it doesn't bother you, you know? When I finished my primary education, I had had enough. And I remember there's a time my mom was coming to visit. I packed my bags, my clothes, and I put them in my room. I think I hid them under the bed, sorry. So when she came, I asked for her car keys. You know, just being me, like, oh, I just want to see your car. I want to know how it feels to touch your keys and whatnot. I took the keys. Mimi nikazunguka na virago vyangu, nikaenda nikaweka kwenye gari. So later in the evening when she's leaving, of course she calls for me because she wants me to give her back the keys. And I told her, well, today is that day. We're going together. She's like, oh, we've been over this. Actually, now that Shushu is here, let's talk about it. I'm like, if you're talking to her, that's fine. It's none of my business. I'll be in the car. Because for sure, silali huku leo. And she was like, oh, I think she tried to make it look like I'm being dramatic. And I think that's the first time I expressed my suicidal thoughts. And I told her, I promise you, Mom, you leave me here tonight, you'll come for a dead body. I'll kill myself. And I remember telling her, I'm the one who does the dishes in this house. I know where the sharp knives are. I'll kill myself. She's like, oh, still, hey, me, I went to the car. I don't know what, sijui aliongelea nini, but when she came, I was not getting out of that car. So she took me with her to Nairobi, sorry. And I think eventually I started regretting because I felt like I was forcing issues. Because even when we started staying together, there was a lot of awkwardness. And I was not even confident enough to talk to her. I don't even think I told her when my period started. I was scared of her. I felt like she didn't want me. So I'd always lock myself in the room because I didn't want us to like bump into each other. When she's downstairs, I'm in my room the whole time. Sasa, speaking of room, when we got to her house, tell me why she's living in a big 3-bedroom house by herself. Well, I've been begging for her to bring me to Nairobi. Ati bado anatafuta pesa. Usi mtu anatafuta pesa. You see, now it even broke my heart. I'm like, you have the resources, you have the capacity. So what is the problem? Kwani huko unanitaka? You know, it just feels so bad. So when I started staying with her, it got very awkward. You can tell nimepangua mipango zake. And for me, I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to stay in my room. So sometimes I could just stay the whole day without eating because I just don't want to bump into her. Because sijui kama anaweza kasirika nipiganishe tu makofi, you know. So yeah, struggles of feeling like the neglected child. And then for me, I'm like, but I'm the only child. It's not like we're 5 of us, now you have to do the math. Mimi peke yangu bado. Doesn't bother you that you're this distant with your child. Now, when I started staying with my mom, at first I was like, this is way better than back with my shosho because sipigu kila siku, sishotiwi kila siku. But now I felt like it was also kind of worse. You see, at least hata ukipigwa, someone is paying attention to you enough to be pigaing you. But here there's so much distance, there's a huge disconnect. And I'm like, you're my mom. I mean, we should sort of have a relationship, you know. But that was the beginning of more trauma. So eventually, my mom had a boyfriend. And how I learned is I'd get home, I'd see him. So at first I thought it's a business person. The second time, and then at 8 p.m., I'm like, yes, biashara. So later I learned that's the boyfriend. So because at first I was in boarding school, that's something else yenye iliniuma. I felt like my mom was always getting rid of me. So when I moved in with her, starting high school, she took me to an 844 boarding school. I didn't like 844. Eventually I told her, please, for the love of God, get me out of 844. And she's like, sawa. So we looked for an IGCSE school, but pia huko akanitupanisha na relatives. And then when I was brought back to her, akanieka boarding. I mean, anyway, back to the boyfriend. So this guy became a regular in the house. And I remember there's this time he was taking a nap. My mom was making lunch. So when it was ready, she told me to go wake him up and tell him that lunch is ready. So I just go wake the guy up. We had lunch ko tayari njo. And then he called me back in the room and he tells me, Ati, the next time you're sent to wake me up, you have to wake me up with a kiss. I'm not even 18. I don't even think I was 16. So I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that, no, it's not right, you know? So just out of fear, I was like, okay. So I left. He calls me and he says, it starts today. And I'm so tiny and unaware of these things. And I'm like, you know, that's not right. So he insisted. And it was like a slight back and forth. And I remember eventually I just went downstairs because I'm like, at the end of the day, if you're hungry, utashuka, you know? So that was the start of, let me be nice. That was the start of that rough journey. So ikaanza kuescalate mdogo mdogo. So I told my mom, your boyfriend is crossing a few lines. You will not believe what my mom told me. You're the one who's always hanging out with him. Now keep in mind, the only time I'm hanging out with this guy, my mom is probably in the kitchen or we're under the same roof. And also keep in mind, my entire childhood, I was deprived of a father figure. Because even my grandmother, she's separated with my grandpa. He's not in the picture. He's kutu kwingine. So here is a man who is showing interest. He's asking me about school. He's asking me about my hobbies. I remember the time I had a hobby of writing. So he'd be like, do you have any material you've written? Let's read it. So here's a man showing interest in my life. He's giving me father vibes, you know? And that's why I always want to see it, talk, because you never ask me about my life. You don't even know if I write, you know? Actually, in regards to my biological father, my mom has never had a conversation about it, but I remember asking her twice. The first time, she dodged it. The second time, I was slightly pushy, but she didn't give me an answer. So I felt that maybe it's offensive to her that, you know, she's providing everything, and here I am still asking about a man who has probably not contributed even a coin to any of this. So I just pulled back and I'm like, maybe let me ask my aunties. Actually, the second time I asked her is because I asked an aunt of mine and she was like, well, uliza mamako, you know? Yeah, but I never got answers. So when this guy kept doing his things, I told my mom and she's like, you're the one who's always hanging out with him. Nashinanga tu hapo mkipiga story mkicheka nini nini. I'm like, oh, that's definitely not the answer I expected, you know? So she made light of it. And as you can imagine, this guy's not stupid. He could connect the dots. And I think he could also tell that my mom and I are not very close. I know for sure you could have felt that disconnect. So that's what he capitalized on. So he started taking it to another level. I remember there's a time he deliberately pissed my mom off, like poking all the wounds and touching all the nerves until my mom lost it. I remember she slammed a glass to the wall. And now he used that as an excuse to take me home with him. To his house, yes. So like, oh, Sophie, now you're so angry. I don't even think your daughter will feel safe sleeping here tonight. Let me go with her to my house. I'll bring her tomorrow morning. My goodness. My mom agreed. Okay, I don't think she agreed. I feel like she just didn't disagree. She was just okay with this guy taking me out to his place. And remember, I told her what he's doing. So yeah, it got too much. I think I have snippets of him like unzipping my dress, asking me, I allow him to touch me because if I allow him, he will marry me because he loves me so much. A lot of nonsense. And you know, at the time, remember, nimetoka from my shows, there isn't much exposure. I'm not very woke to some of these things. So here I am, very innocent mind. I don't know these things happen. And the one time I have a feeling this is so wrong, I tell my mom, she makes light of it. And now here are things having escalated and now I'm traumatized. Mwanaume ana bonge la nyumba, but it's like, oh, you're sleeping with me in my room. We all know what that means. So by the time she realized, it was too late. I mean, they broke up, akamfukuza akatupa vitu zake, but the trauma, I'm already traumatized. It's too late, bana. I don't know what caused their breakup. I think it's their own reasons. But I think eventually she got a wind of, because it became a pattern of this guy taking me to his house. So I think she got to a point where she's like, okay, this is too much. And I think she realized now this guy is not genuine. And I mean, I feel like that counts as cheating. It's just that there's a lot of manipulation going into it. But anyway, I don't know what other factors led to their breakup. But for the love of God, I'm hoping my trauma was one of them. Just the fact that he kept taking me with him. I hope that's the first thing she factored in. And she was like, I've got to cut off this guy because I know something else. He was very big on asking for money, huge amounts of money from my mom. So I know probably that could have also been another factor because she felt used. But for the love of God, I'm hoping the thing that motivated her to end that relationship was what this guy was doing to me. So I cried to her when I was at my shoshos, telling her this is too painful for me. I talked to her when this boyfriend of hers was doing the unthinkable. She made light of it. So this even made me feel worse. Because I'm like, okay, so mbona uliniza kama unitaki? Could have just given me up, you know? Because I didn't have to go through all that trauma. Yet I have a parent who's very capable. It hurts. And this is sasa hapo ndo aliharibu maneno. So he brainwashed me into believing that my mom didn't like me. Remember, that's what I'm thinking already from my childhood. I'm like, my mom doesn't love me. She doesn't like me. She's probably just put off by the thought of me. So he capitalized on that. So he'd tell me, your mom does not like you, sijui nini nini. And then I could see there are some changes that this man brought into our home. Like there was some sort of unity. Like at some point we'd all be downstairs, talking, catching up, getting to know about me, about life, about school. Actually, at that point, that's when I got the confidence to tell my mom, I can't do it for 4. It's too much for me. And then the guy was like, oh, you know, Sophie, just listen to your daughter, Nini. So now she took me to an GCSE school. So I'm like, this man has come and he's already shifting things up, you know. So when he take me to his house, it's just me and him. So he's telling me how your mom does not like you. If she liked you, she'd not be doing A, B, C, D. She would not have left you with your grandmother. Should not have. So he gets into my head. The math is actually mathing. And now he walks into, he now makes me believe that he is the perfect person for me to have in his life. So now he's like making me believe that he's genuine, he likes me, he cares about me. And then while at it, he's unzipping your dress, nini. He's like, if you allow me to, I remember at some point he told me, if you allow me to touch you, I'll marry you because I have so much love for you. Just a bunch of nonsense. And at the time, of course, I'm scared and I know this is not right. But who am I going to cry to? My mom won't listen. I had no male figure in my life telling me they love me, they care about me, even showing it. So this one who's showing it to me and genuinely saying that they care about me, a part of me believes them. It's just that now they're going the extra mile of showing their love. And I don't know how to feel about it. I've never had someone talk to me and tell me, a man should never touch you like this and like that. A man should not get this close to you. A man should, no one has given me that memo. So while he's here doing all these things, a part of me is like, this is not right. But then again, how do I know it's not wrong, So now my mind got used to that nonsense. And by the time now they were breaking up, maji alikuwa shamwagika na hezi zoleka. I'd be lying if I said that did not affect how I relate with men. Because till date, I'm 29, I still struggle with relationships. I have so much love to give, yes. I am genuine, I'm transparent, I'm loyal, all those good traits. But a part of me just always wants to sabotage when something is going too good. And then sometimes I always have the paranoia of a man will sexually assault me in the name of love. And maybe because my brain at some point was used to that kind of love, sometimes I feel like, how do I draw a line between being manipulated into something or myself willingly to do it? So sometimes I fear that if I say no to a man, he might take it forcefully. So when sometimes a relationship is too good, I sabotage. And then also just looking back at the patterns of the men I've had in my life, my paps, he walked out. I don't even know or that he waited for me to come to this world, but he was not there. The father figure that was present, you see what he did. So there's that fear of, I don't think there are genuine men. There's always some two demons inside this man. So at some point they'll come off. And before they come off, let me sabotage. Let me not get too involved. But sometimes it hurts, because the same way you genuinely love people, you want to be loved. You want to have someone in your life who cares about you. But now there's that fear of, if they actually care about me, there's something they want from me. So here we are. The man is out of the picture. It's just me and my mom. I thought that would create some sort of bonding session, like, I'm so sorry, I've been so distant. Let me, let's get close. Let's have a relationship. Well, I guess not, because now I think at this point I had changed schools, and I went to stay with a relative. They were good peeps, but at some point, they kicked me out. Again, when you grow up, you learn how to put two and two together. So I figured that my aunt was very hurt. She could not say it, because how is my mom living such a good life, the soft life, in a 3-bedroom big house? Yet she's putting this burden into their home, because at the time they were still trying to make ends meet. They had a small baby. So how is it that my mom, who's doing very well for herself, who only has one child and has the resources to take care of me, how is she now putting me kukua mzigo kwa watu wengine? So I can sort of feel the frustration they had towards me, because I felt like my aunt didn't like me. Funny enough, right now we are so close, and we've never had a conversation about that moment. So what happened, now at this point, I think this must have been 2010. Man, I was depressed. I just knew it was depression. I was so depressed. I couldn't sleep. I was feeling some weirdness. Now, before I even came to stay with my aunt, I started cutting myself. So self-inflicted cuts. So nilianza na miguu, because nikivaa trouser hamtajua. So when I was staying with my auntie, I was like, there isn't a proper way to go about it. Because you see, at my mom's, I had my own room, so I could just do it in secret. But here, I feel like we are all in each other's business, So now, I was numb. I was misjudging nilikuwa nafilaje, but now that I know what I know that was the beginning of some weird wave of depression. I feel like a lot of people don't understand this narrative of inflicting pain on yourself. Actually, the first person who saw me do it, they're like, acha you jinga. In my head, I'm like, trust me, I do. So back at my mom's place, actually how it started, this is weird. I used to swallow pins. Now, you see, at this point, I was suicidal. I remember actually at some point, I wrote a suicide note to my mom, apologizing, telling her, I'm so sorry for everything. I'm so sorry. Maybe I'm too much into your space. I'm so sorry for forcing you to bring me to Nairobi. I am so sorry. And it's okay. I'll just get out of your way. So I told her, consider this to be my goodbye. And I think I took an overdose. Tell me why I woke up again. It's the grace of God. So I realized, and then I think I tried again. Suicide, it didn't work. So what I did, I used to swallow pins. Is it the sharp ones? So I'm like, if I swallow, I used to say I want to be one of those people who die in their sleep, maybe because of internal bleeding or nililala sikuamka, those kind of things, like just a peaceful death. So I would swallow some to pins. These pins we used to use kunini chats. Yeah, so kana kwanga hivi alafu na kakifuniko. So I'd remove the kakifuniko, then I like have a few of those pins, then I swallow. I'm like, I'm sure, for sure zitenda zikinigwaruza. Then I'll start bleeding, and then people won't know, and then maybe one day I'll just sleep and not wake up. That, when I tell you I was desperate to die, Justus, I mean it. Because you feel like nobody wants you. The people who pretend to want you, they want something from you. And whatever they get from you, they leave you traumatized. So I realized, it's been a couple of days, nothing has happened. I'm not coughing blood. I've not seen blood anywhere. So the first time nikaanza tu kujidunga, like, I think it would be, you're in so much pain that you become numb. It's like you're not feeling anything. So it started with probably me biting myself, and I'm like, oh, okay. Then I took those pins. Instead of now swallowing, I would prick myself on these veins. I'd prick myself. I'm like, okay, that kind of feels nice. So escalating it, and I started cutting myself. I'm like, with every cut, I felt better. With every cut, I felt better. Now, even to make me feel better, I'd cut myself and go to the shower. So najua maji ikishika a fresh cut, there's always that stinging pain. That, I don't know, that was such a relief for me because it makes me feel alive, like I can feel things, I can feel pain, and then it sort of would reset me back to earth or something. But now you see, I'm constantly depressed, so there's constant need for me to keep feeling alive. So ikaanza hivyo mdogo mdogo. I remember there's a time I actually came home and now I was bleeding. So you can see from the pants, and I told my mom, nimegwaruzwa tu as I was taking a walk. Sure. So that's how it started, the therapy of cutting yourself. So I remember I even told my mom to buy me scalpels. That is a shule, but yeah, it's because I realized I'd cut myself or I'd prick myself, then I'd misplace the pins. Ama when the cleaning lady would come, she would just clean up. So I used to have a packet of scalpels. Unajikatakata, unasikia vizuri. Sometimes it comes from a point of being so numb, you're not feeling anything, but at the same time, you're feeling so much pain, so much disappointment. Like your body just, there's a lot of confusion going on in your body. So for you to reset and meet halfway with your body, now you cut yourself, it gives you some sort of relief. So now I started being addicted to the bleed. I think for someone in that particular space, there's always a question of what to do. Let me tell you what not to do. Don't reprimand this person. Don't be like, hiyo ni ufala unafanya. Like I'm telling you the way someone would tell me, sasa hii ni ufala gani? You see, now you're even making me feel worse. So as I feel worse about myself. I start feeling worse about my life. So the minute I step out of this place, I'm looking for a blade. So don't reprimand someone. You may not understand this whole thing as much as I've tried to paint the picture, but sometimes we just want love. We just want to know that at least one person cares. You just come, even ask me, so like the way you've asked me, what is the motivation behind this cut? Just show interest in the wounds. And then with time, just find a way of not telling them achana na hiyo wembe, just because sometimes there needs to be presence of, you see now when I'm doing it, for me, there's lack of love, attention, affection, nobody cares. So when someone comes in the picture and they genuinely care about me, they want to spend time with me, they want to know about my day, they care. So the abundance of that, with time, just unapata hii side, kuna upungufu wa that toxic behavior. So this thing of stop, if you don't stop, I'll do what, nini. Just be there, ask them about their wounds, when did you start, show some concern, does it not hurt you, do you never think about tetanus, nini, pole, and then just show them love. And then try to keep them as occupied. So once in a while, unafanya nini, twende lunch, twende mahali. So you see, when I'm in public, I'm not going to do it. So my day is packed with other things, and I know you care. I know very often you'll call me. So when you call me, I stop. So just being there, show love, care, check up on these people. Don't reprimand them. With time, they let go of that behavior. They're like, oh, okay. You have to show so much love to this person. So by the time you're telling them, this is not good for you, they believe you. Because they're like, this is someone who cares about me. They're telling me to stop this. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But ukikuja unasema achana, utajikata, ukufe, utapata tetanus, nini. It doesn't help. In fact, it makes it even worse. Like we go home, we even want to do more cuts. Yeah, just showing love. So I had been so depressed. I remember there's a time I couldn't sleep. And my aunt was kind enough to like sit down with me and talk. And I told her, I feel like mom doesn't love me, nini. And she told me, just have a conversation with her. And I'm like, I can't even talk to her to ask for anything because I'm scared. How will I sit her down and tell her the way I feel, So, but now things escalated so much. I feel like I probably lost my element and I was a different person. Sometimes that happens with depression. You lose yourself so much that people start seeing a different you, but because they can't put a finger on it, wanazanga kusema na umechange, umeanza kuwa arrogant, it's the demons we're battling. So this particular moment, I think the plan was I leave her house politely. So the question was, where are you gonna go? And I told her, man, I feel like my mom doesn't love me. Even before I get there, she had gotten me a therapist to be speaking to, someone she knows. I think I went for just 1 or 2 sessions. I didn't trust that therapist because I was not sure there would be some confidentiality because they know each other. So I don't know kama nikitoka ako sasa msichana wenu. So I didn't feel confident, and I remember they even put me on antidepressants, and I was so ready to overdose and leave, you know. But of course my uncle was monitoring my consumption. So I think ikafika mahali I was too much for them, and I can understand. I may not have a clear memory of what that looked like, but I think I was too much. Remember, they also had a very young child. So ikawa, I've got to leave. And I remember the therapist had asked me where I want to go. And I was like, I can't go to my mom's because I feel like she doesn't love me. And I honestly don't know how I feel about her. And given that nilikuwa nimeforce issues na yeye a while back, I don't want to impose again. They're like, so, but you've got to go somewhere. And I said, honestly, I'd rather go back to my grandmother's. Yeah, I was ready to go back to that trauma and die there because I just didn't know how my mom felt about me, you know? So we agreed on a day that I'm supposed to leave, but kwa sababu a girl toto didn't know how to use matatus, I had to meet with my uncle somewhere. He drops me somewhere, I take a matatu and all that. So when I left, nikachelewa. So when I called my uncle kumwambia nimetoka, akaniambia, I'm even rushing for a meeting. Let's do this. You just head back home, and then tomorrow when I'm leaving in the morning, we'll leave together. I said, sure. So nikaambia matatu nishukishe like immediately. Taka ni katikati ya barabara. So on my way back, I got robbed. So my jacket was stolen. My money was stolen. My phone, obviously. Nilikuwa tu as I am. Alafu kuna baridi because my jacket was taken. I walked for about 4 hours or more, if I'm not wrong. This was at Zangong. So by the time I was getting to the house, it was about 8. She's like, sasa tumeamua utakuwa unakuja time unajisikia. I'm like, first of all, I'm shivering. I started this safari like kukiwa na mwangaza. I'm getting home when it's late. Because I'd walk for so long, then rest. Then keep walking, then rest. I didn't know anyone in that place. Sasa umeamua utakuwa unakuja vile unataka. I'm like, me first of all, I'm so scared. I was robbed. And I walked from this point up to here. That's why I've taken so long, because I kept walking and stopping. She's like, you're not entering my house. I'm like, what? No, and then she said, mpaka ukaamua utanizimia simu. I'm like, my phone was stolen. Everything I have was taken. She's like, yeah, I know, this age, unaweza kuwa hata umeficha simu hapo kando. I'm like, nificha simu hapo kando ibiwe. Like, my phone was stolen. I have walked from this point to this point. She didn't care. She's like, you're not coming into my house. So I told her, okay, because I think I'll be sleeping out today, can I come in and take a jacket? She's like, wait there, I'll get you a jacket. She brought me a jacket, which was not pink, not white, some iyo kaleko hapo katikati. So I told her, since I'm going to be sleeping on the streets, can I take a black one? She told me, you wanted a jacket, I've given you a jacket. Now leave. Akazima ko kastima ka hapo nje. So I went to the stairs. Let me tell you, Justus, I cried. Because I'm like, what do people do from this point? Like, I don't even have a phone to call anyone. I don't know anyone in that neighborhood. The only people I knew are maybe watu wa hardware, because I'd just say hi, being the social bee that I am. Tuakinyozi, just hi. But honestly, I don't know anyone. Wacha nikwambia niliranda for a few days on those streets. For the first time in my life, I went begging for food, like going into a restaurant. Wakikaribia kufunga. Yeah. Asking them, najua mkikaribia kufunga, there's food and imebaki. Like, do you mind pouring me a plate? Let me tell you about the first night. So nimemaliza kulia kwa stairs. Nikashuka chini. I knew the hardware was closed. So nikaenda kwa kinyozi nikasema, I hope they're open so I can borrow a phone. I knew my mom's number offhand. So I call her and I'm like, I'm crying. I'm like, Mom, I've been kicked out. Auntie kicked me out. I'm out on the streets. I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. What if something happens to me? And she's like, umefukuzwa ukifanya nini? So I tell her the story. I'm like, the plan was I meet with uncle, nini. But on my way back, I got robbed from this point. So I walked from this point to this point, which took me so many hours. By the time I was getting home, it was late. Oh, Sri, but you know, Auntie keeps complaining about Sri, what you're doing, Sri, nini. I'm like, honestly, this is really not the time, you know? So what broke my heart was, there had been instances before where there's a group we used to go visit children's homes. And what my mom would do what she would do was, nikirudi town na nimechelewa na nimwambie sipati matatu, she's like, just take a taxi, I'll pay. From town to Mlolongo. It happened like I think 2 or 3 times, but I'll tell her I have a friend who's willing to host me and she's here. When we get home, I can ask her parents to call you. She's like, it's okay, just take a taxi, I'll pay. So the one time, I need you to tell me take a taxi, I'll pay. You don't do anything. Unanipasha. Ati, oh, I've been hearing a lot of complaints about you. I'm like, Mom, I'm telling you I'm scared. I'm out on the streets, I don't know anyone. Unanipigia kelele, So eventually I just hanged up. So I told her, Mom, I just wanted you to know that I'm on the streets in case anything happens to me. And I hanged up and I gave the guy back the phone. And I told him, don't pick when she calls because atakuuliza where I am. And you won't have an answer because even I don't know where I'm going. So I slept outside on the streets of Ngong. The next day, I waited for... There's this guy who used to work in a restaurant. Again, kusalimia tu watu. It comes in handy sometimes. So I went to the restaurant for breakfast. He's like, what's not going on? No, I think I went for dinner. Breakfast, nilizunguka tu Ngong. Actually, there was a church in Ngong. Ilikuwa inaitwa NPC Ngong, but I think they renamed it. So I went to NPC Ngong and I asked to see the pastor. And I told the pastor, there was a lot of people that he needed to meet. So I told the pastor, because he was trying to see if he can help the same people at a go. So anauliza, hey, why are you here? So nikamwambia, my name is Susan and I'm here to be taken to a children's home. Because I told him, I know churches have relationships with some children's homes. So I'm here to be taken to one. My family doesn't want me. And I remember he was in so much shock. So he told me to just wait there at the reception. Amalizane na watu. But I don't know why I panicked. I left. So I think by that, I know actually msumbua for a while. So later in the evening, I went to the restaurant. I asked that guy who used to manage the place, I'm like, might you guys have some food that, I can just bite on? Akanipatia. Then I gave him the story. Then he's like, you can come to my place tonight. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Because I'm like, I already know how this is going to turn out. But I thought about it and I'm like, if this guy rapes me, I don't think it's the worst thing that can happen to me right now. There's something my stepdad or whoever did. My mom has rejected me. She doesn't want anything to do with me. I don't think if this guy rapes me, it's the worst thing that can happen. So, wacha tu niende. So I went with him that evening. He actually slept on the couch. I was in the bed, but the whole night I was just... Because I'm crying, because inaniuma. Jamani, nimekuambia nimefukuza. I'm your only child. If you have 5 other kids, I'd be like, okay, yeah, maybe she'll worry about Kina Brayo and Kevu, but it's just me. And I'm telling you, I've been kicked. I am a girl on the streets of Ngong at night with nowhere to go. And the first thing you think about is kunipigia kelele, So the next morning when the guy was leaving, he gave me 500. He told me, feel free to come pass by the restaurant. I'll give you some food. But in case you don't, here's 500. Itakusaidia. And I was back on the streets. Then the worst thing happened. My period started. I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to shower. First of all, I feel dirty because the same clothes I have from Jana Nikirobiwa are the same ones I have. My period started and now I'm like, okay, this just could not get any worse. And I'm starting to think about how I can spend the 500. I bought sanitary towels. I bought some underwear. But now I was like, where do I shower? And I was like, can I just walk into a motel or a hotel and ask them to just give me 5 minutes just to shower and change? But then I was like, maybe they'll ask me for something small. And I need that something small because I'm on the streets, So I knew a guy who alikuwa anapenda kucheza pool. And I knew there was a pool area. So I went there. I'm feeling so dirty. So I went to that pool area and I asked for him. I think his name was Mike. Nikaambiwa bado masaa yake haijatokea. So I had to sit around in an area full of so many men. I'm feeling so dirty. I've not showered. My periods are here. And when he came eventually, I asked him if I could shower at his. I gave him the story. And I'm like, can I please go to your place and shower? He told me, no problem, but my dad is home. And I think the dad used to be, sijui kama ni polisi ama something about authority. Kanambia, and if I take you home, of course, my dad will ask questions, unless you're willing to share this story and then you tell you the authorities. I'm like, no. I'm not going to take my family to the police because they don't love me. So he told me, but my brother's girlfriend is around. I could ask my brother to talk to her. So I remember they came and I just saw woye, and I'm feeling so bad. And I'm like, I'm thinking about the fact that my mom is somewhere in a 3-bedroom house by herself. I'm begging for food, trying to get somewhere to shower because my period started. Na ako tu sawa penye yuko. Like, doesn't bother her, So anyway, this lady came through for me. She took me to her place. I showered, man. It felt so nice to shower after a long time. I showered, I changed, she gave me food. But now the next day, she told me, you can't stay because my mom is coming. The mom is a police officer. I'm like, it just gets worse, doesn't it? She told me, unless you're comfortable telling my mom what happened to you. And again, I'm like, no, I think my family has made it clear they don't like me, and I'm not going to involve the police. To force love. So she asked me, where are you going to go? Because you've got to go somewhere, and I can't throw you back to the streets. There's got to be someone that you know, hata kama si family member. So I told her, actually, I do. When we used to stay in Mombasa, there's this lady who was very close with my mom. She's a bit elderly. I'm just hoping she's still alive and she's still there. Akaniambia, so Embakasi, yeah. So she took me to town. She took me to the place where first I think hata akanibaya chipo, nikashiba. She took me to the stage, I think zinakuanga number 33. She put me in the matatu. Akambia dere usimpitishe Avenue Park. Akambia makanga usimpitishe Avenue Park. I think she even told the passengers, umsichana asipitishwe Avenue Park. So I got there. But I was scared to go to that lady's house because I'm like, now how do I even start? I don't even think she'll believe me because she was kind of close with my mom. So before that, I knew a guy who lived around. His name was Ahmed. And he had a very easy number. Menye nilikuwa nimeshika. So I borrowed a phone. I called him. I'm like, this and this happened. I was kicked out. I don't know where to go. Are you in a position to host me while I figure things out? Akaniambia, oh my, jamani, I think he was from Coast. I'm so sorry. Wacha nikitoka kazini nitakwambia. But for now, just go to this and this apartments. Ambia tu security unaningoja, and then I'll be there. So I went to the security person. Kambia, Ahmed ameniambia nisubiri. So I waited. 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. So akaniuliza, uko sure bado anakuja? I said, yeah. And aliniambia tu ningoje, atachelewa kidogo. I think he used to be a chef. 9 p.m., 10 p.m. So nikamwambia security, naomba simu. I make a call. So I called Ahmed. He's like, hello. Uko salama? So I'm like, are you sleeping? He's like, yeah, pole niliamua kuja kwa sister yangu. I'm like, kasema, no worries, haina shida. I didn't even tell him, I've been here waiting for you. I was like, like this is it. So nikamwambia hakuna shida, I'll figure something out. I slept there with the watchies, and I remember one of them tried to assault me sexually. And at this point, I'm like, again, it's not the worst thing that could happen to me. So nilikaa tu, and then there were so many mosquitoes. Nimekaa tu against the wall. Midnight, I think now there's a lorry that came, a truck that brings, I think, milk and bread. Ikapark hapo. I begged the driver to just sleep hapo mbele for like a few minutes. Kaniambia sawa. Let me tell you, I think I was so knocked out. I'd not slept well in a minute. I was so knocked out. Nilikuwa naamshwa hivi kwa sababu kumekucha. It's 6 p.m. and the truck needs to go. They've unpacked, hata sikusikia wakiunpack hizo crates. So I woke up and they're like, sasa Ahmed utamsubiri ama? Nikasema, no, let me. Wacha niende tu hivi. So I went to, this is crazy, but I went to my, I don't know why I keep calling him stepdad, but anyway, he was that for a minute. I went to his house because alikuwa anaishi hizo sides. I was like, I know this man has traumatized me, but at this point, desperate times, desperate measures. Let me just go and see if he still cares about me. I also need to shower. Remember, I'm still on my periods on the streets. Just go and see if atanisaidia. I mean, after all the trauma he left me with, he owes me that much, you know? So I thought. So I went, didn't succeed. Wacha nikwambie nilizunguka Embakasi Justus. From uko karibu na, is it Taj Mall? Ama Team Mall? Taj Mall. Mpaka sijui uko Tasia, past Tasia ukienda Nyayo Estate, and then back to Avenue Park. My God. Nilizunguka. And then when I didn't find him, I figured, okay, my last option is to go to that lady who we used to live in the same estate with, Uko Avenue Park. So I went, it was very early in the morning, and she was shocked to see me there. And she's like, oh my God, it's been a minute. I've not seen you in a while. How have you been? How's mom? And I just looked down and she's like, is everything okay? And I just burst into tears. You know how someone asks you, are you okay? And then, oh, man, I cried so hard. And I think her kids were over with her grandkids. So I'm like, this is not a good image. I mean, I'm just a stranger who just came in here. I'm crying. She served me breakfast. I had not seen that much food in a minute. Like all this is food, you know? So I had breakfast and we talked about it. I told her how I feel. My mom doesn't love me. She doesn't like me. I told her everything that happened. And then at around lunchtime, she owned a restaurant. See God, she owned a restaurant. So we went there and then she served me lunch. And then now eventually she told me, but you see now you've got to go somewhere. You can't go back on the streets. I would love to host you, but you've seen my kids that are around. There's literally no room. And I said, it's okay. So she's like, so who do we call? And I said, let's call my grandmother. Yeah, even after the trauma, she was my first choice. And so she called my grandma, and for some reason, my shosho was very excited to hear that I was okay and alive. And so we made plans of how I was going to meet with her. Sorry. Whew. Yeah, we need therapy. So I met with her, and actually what this lady did was she got me someone. I think it's either her son or her son-in-law. And she told him, I need you to make sure this girl has met with her grandmother. Utamwacha time umemhand over kwa shosho yake. Don't just give her instructions of where to go. I want you to hand her over to her grandmother, then you can come back. I think that's one of the nicest things anyone has ever done. So I met with my shosho. So when I reconnected with my grandma, I learned that they were going to Malindi. And I remember she made a joke. She's like, hey, your timing is perfect. Kesho tunaenda Malindi. And I'm like, So the other thing that sort of broke my heart is my mom had planned for us to go to Mombasa, like go and bond and whatnot. But well, I guess not anymore. So when we went to Malindi and they were in Mombasa, by they, I mean my mom, my aunt and my uncle. Yeah, life just moved on for them, but it's okay. So this particular day we met halfway, quite literally, out of Malindi and out of Mombasa. So I had sat at the very back of the van, and everybody akashuka kusalimiana, banter here and there. Mimi sikushuka. So my mom came, she's like, hi, everybody, hi. I didn't say hi back. Honestly, I was like, how do you say hi? Like you just didn't kick me out. How are you saying hi? Like what? So mi sikusalimika. Nikakaa tu kwa van, sikushuka. I didn't even care about stretching my legs. I'm like, tutastretchia mbele. And we went back to the hotel. And my grandmother confronted me about it. More like shouted at me. This is nonsense. You can't have that kind of an attitude. Your mom and your aunties are saying hi. Umekaa tu. Hey, I think for the first time I had the audacity to talk back at her. I mean, I knew I probably would die after that, but I was like, hey, let me stop you right there. I was on the streets for how many days? I have come back. Who has asked me about my well-being, sorry? Who has asked me if I was raped? Who has asked me how I was surviving? Who has asked me where I was sleeping, what I was eating? You just care about the fact that I didn't say hi back to people, the same people who betrayed me. We're not doing this. So I walked out and I just went to the pool because it just didn't make sense to me that the only thing you care about, I understand it's disrespectful to not say hi back, but at this time I am hurting. The wound is still very fresh. Nilienda huko nikiomba chakula. My period started on the streets. I'm feeling so dirty. I'm trying to figure out whose house I can hire for about 5 minutes to shower. I'm going to people's houses, trying out their clothes to see if they can fit me because sina manguo. And all you care about is I didn't say hi back. I'm serious. I just stormed out and I went to the pool. I'm like, I don't even have the grace for this because it didn't make sense to me. I was like, I'm trying to pay pressure juu ya salamu. There are bigger things that have happened to me out on the streets for those few days. And you don't care. Even me, I don't care about saying hi back. That's not a life and death situation. Ati hujasalimiwa. Mine was. I could have been raped. Just as ningekuwa kidnapped. Could have been trafficked, for the love of God. I mean, anything bad that you can think about could have happened to me. I could have been hit by a car. Then you're telling me the only thing you care about ni salamu. Hata nyinyi. But anyway, now, funny thing is, till date, nobody ever talked about that. Nobody ever asked about, by the way, when this happened, how nobody, even my mom, by the way, even saying I'm sorry, or even saying, hata kama si sorry, by the way, I was worried that time that you were on the streets for this. Nobody talked about it. And I know that's a thing we have as Kenyans or Africa, I don't know, where we don't sit down and address the elephant in the room, especially if it involves wazazi na mtoto. Like, we don't have those conversations. And unfortunately, that's a mentality we've grown up in. Kids are being traumatized by their family members, parents, relatives, and nobody wants to talk about it. We can't normalize that. We can't normalize parents traumatizing kids or relatives traumatizing kids, and we're just okay. We just move on. It's not right. So it shocked me, no one cared, but at this point it was not a shocker for me because right from the beginning of my childhood up until this moment, my mom had made it clear that she doesn't care about me, you know? And a lot of people will justify and say she was a first-time parent, she didn't know how to be a parent, she was probably also struggling with postpartum. I understand she had her fair share of troubles or things she was struggling with, but at some point it felt like it was just being thrown in my face. And I was constantly feeling like an oops child. Like I was not planned for, but because I'm here and I cannot be aborted, well, we have to deal with this. You know, it hurt me. So even as a parent, as much as, yes, they keep saying they're trying to figure out parenting, hey, be intentional about it. Be intentional about the environments where you put your kids. Be intentional about the people who you're trusting your kids with. It's not right. It's so unfair. It just makes you feel like, and remember, Nikki grew up nilikuwa naitwa nini, useless and hopeless. And so as you're living life day in, day out, you're like, okay, maybe I really am useless. Maybe I am hopeless. Maybe nothing good will come out of me. Because people don't see you valuable enough to want to spend time with you, love on you, just, you know. It hurts. But you see, we can't force people to love us. Even our parents, if they want to be distant, yeah. And that's why for me, I always say, honestly, the one thing that has sustained me is God's love. Because the number of times I've tried to end my life, because I always felt that it would be the best thing for my mom, just me being out of the picture. Maybe that way she'd be happier. Being on the streets, hata ukienda huko kuomba chakula, unajua hata mtu anaweza kuwekea sumu. When someone offers to host you because you have nowhere to go and it's a man, they could very well take advantage of you, but they don't. It's a grace of God. Sometimes I think maybe that's why I'm called Susan Grace, because the grace has indeed been sufficient. And when my mom passed away, as much as it really hurt me to lose her, because now she was my only parent, what really hurt me the most is knowing that I never got answers for some of the questions I had. Because even before we get there, ilifika mahali, I could tell now she's overcompensating. Anything I want, I get. Sometimes I don't even ask for money, but I'm given money. So napata, you have so much money because every day she's leaving you with some money. But let me talk about something I almost forgot. Sorry, sometimes memories come mdogo mdogo. There's a time my mom left me in the house alone, and she went God knows where. Till date, sijajua alienda wapi, but she left me alone in the house. I was not even 18. I don't know if I was 16. And the scariest part of that moment was I had a condition. Nilikuwa na nosebleed randomly, and well, like we could just be talking and then blood is just dripping. And then it used to be so much that I'd get to a point where I'm feeling dizzy because I'm losing too much blood. Eventually I went to the doctor and I learned apparently kuna vein ilikuwa imekatika. That's why blood was just coming out. So I'd sleep and I'd wake up with like one side mejaa damu, and then my pillow is also soaked with blood. So this particular morning, I'm assuming she left and I thought she's gone to work. So because it's a big house, I'm kind of scared. Mi nilikuwa downstairs. I think I was watching TV, nimekaa tu kwa kiti. And then just losing blood, I became drowsy. So I passed out. I wake up in the middle of the night, my mom is not there. I go back to sleep. I think she was gone for like 2 days. I'm like, nimeachwa. I forced issues to come into this house, huku ndo nimeachwa. And it was so scary because I didn't know people in the neighborhood. I didn't know if I knew some of her friends at that moment. But it was so scary because I'm like, oh my God, have I been dumped by my own mom? Like, is she going? Is she coming back? She didn't tell me anything. She didn't tell me whether she was going for a trip or she was going for work. I just woke up to realize that niko solo. And then sasa the pressure, I think that also made the bleeding worse. And I'm like, this is so scary. Then you know what happened? This particular morning, nimelala tu kwa couch. I was too scared to go upstairs, especially at night. So this particular morning she came. There was a bunch of people. She came with a bunch of people. She woke me up. So sayo, nimejaa damu one side. My nose is blocked because of the blood. And then she tells me, wake up, we're moving. What? Yeah. Na alikuwa amekuja na I think watu wa kuhama. So I think at that point, now she put me in the care of, I think, my relatives as well. Ndo akahamia Mlolongo. So for a very long time, I didn't even know where she stayed. I didn't know where my own mom stayed. So a big chunk of my life, my mom felt like a stranger or a distant relative. When you unasikianga stories about, you know. But when all was said and done, especially done, now I started realizing she was overcompensating. She was doing the most, you know. And at first I was like, oh, that's nice, but this is not what I wanted. I wanted love. I wanted affection. I wanted to have a bond with you. I remember that time we'd even go to town for shopping. She was very young. People would think that we're sisters, like she's my older sister, and would laugh about it because we fooled a lot of people. But you see, those were just instances here and there. I want to bond with you Monday to Monday. I want to be comfortable sitting next to you on a couch watching TV. But I don't know, for me, I always had that fear of, I don't want to impose, don't force issues. Let me go with your pace. If you want to talk to me, then we'll talk. You want to hang out, we'll hang out. So when she passed away, and this was in 2015, January, that's something else that took a toll on my mental health. As the year started, and I'm being Happy New Year, people are telling you condolences. That was also another traumatic experience because I saw my mom dying. Alikuwa na homa for a while. And then ikafika mahali I told her, hey mom, this homa is not si ya kawaida. Because I know homa how it starts. Inaanzanga mdogo mdogo. Then there's that phase where it's just bad. Then ende ikiisha. But now hers was bad, escalates, worse. You know, it was not getting any better. And my mom was very, 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 very healthy. She was very keen on what she eats. So I told her, hey mom, this homa si ya kawaida. I'm going to town tomorrow. Do I get you medicine? And she said, no, I'll just take my concoction, you know, hot water, ginger, lemon. I told her, mom, that's what you've been taking for the past few weeks. And it's not changing. So she's like, no, it's okay. I'll be okay. And I said, sawa.